best mentor in our association. He was that way as a player. He's been my best mentor. He's an assistant coach player. He mentored me, and he's bringing that mentorship and leadership and coaching to all you. This is what it's all about right here. These are the times of your lives.
The time of your lives. That is Eric Spoelstra, the head coach of the Miami Heat. They were in town over the weekend, and that was in the Michigan locker room right after Saturday night's win over Southern Utah. I'm Dennis Fithian as we get ready to go here on this afternoon live. Thanks for joining us. And to talk a little Michigan here, let me see if I can go ahead and bring up the banner that I made for him as I say hello to Eric Adelson, who's on the line and joins us here. Eric, a professor, a journalist, a longtime Michigan sports commentator, and he joins us here on Afternoon Live. Eric, how are you?
Dennis, it's great to talk to you.
Well, it's always great to talk with you. And you know what? I didn't have to wait. It's been a while, but, it's not like I was waiting around until Michigan got into the college football playoff or anything. But, you've watched how this has unfolded this year. When did you think that maybe this season could be special here for Michigan?
Probably the end of the Ohio State game. I would love to say it was sooner. I thought that they'd get to 8 wins, but I didn't think they'd beat Ohio State. And I thought it was a good season, and I really liked the team. But I'd be lying, Dennis, if I said that I expected that for them to beat Ohio State, especially the way they did. So, I only when it was triple zeros. Because, let's face it, without a win over the rivals, it's not a memorable season. And they didn't beat Michigan State, and you can say that it was the referee's fault and all that, but ends up as an L. And then if they lose to Ohio State at home, then it's another season where, 20 years later, you're like, did they beat the rivals that year? No. Well, this is the year they did, and that makes it a memorable season.
Yeah, I agree with you. You know what? The last 6 minutes of the Penn State game, they were down in that game, and then they made the big play to Eric All for the 47-yard touchdown, and then they got a 4-and-out, and I was like, it's going to be a nice season, at least better than expected. Most people thought about 7 or 8 wins, and I thought they had a chance against Ohio State, but I wasn't predicting them to win like you. So, and then it's just a matter that they did it. They went out there and. How they performed, it was a little bit. I was going to make this comparison. I said, I don't like comparing the Lions to the Wolverines ever, but yesterday I know you were watching that game because I saw you tweeting about it. The Lions had a bunch of ragtag guys that I follow the Lions. I'd never even heard of them, but they played a real solid game. It wasn't any fluke or anything else. They went out there from start to finish and played really well. And that was what Michigan did against Ohio State. They went out there from the first series, offense, defense, and took it all the way to the wire.
Yeah, I think it's a decent comparison, Dennis, because the Lions are doing something they haven't done in a very long time. Really all this century, which is they're establishing the run game. I know they don't have the superstar running back with Swift out, but they are managing the game and keeping the other stars from the other team off the field. And yeah, 2-11-1 is not going to end up in Canton, but. The way that they are playing, or at least trying to play, and the way that Michigan is winning is different, where they're not chucking the ball all over the field like they did with Stafford, and they're just not relying on some late-game heroics. They took control of the tone from the beginning of the game yesterday all the way through, and that kept the lid on Kyler Murray and Arizona. And you know what? Michigan did that at Ohio State too, and against Iowa. And so when you, as a fan, when you start to watch the game, you expect to be nervous and you expect to have, heart palpitations. But when you're able to establish the run and keep running the ball, it keeps everybody calm. And I think that that's what Michigan has been able to do this season.
Yeah, Eric, you were born and raised in Michigan, and now we've just talked about what's happened here for the Michigan football team. We're closing in on New Year's Eve and the college football playoff. You got big bad Georgia there. What are your expectations here? Do you think Michigan has a shot? Now that we just talked about, how we felt heading into the Ohio State game, do you feel like Michigan has a legitimate shot against Georgia?
Yeah, I do. I think Ohio State's better than Georgia. I think that I'm not saying necessarily that Michigan will win this game. I think that Georgia comes in angry. And the type of matchup is not the best, most favorable for Michigan because they have that strong front. But I expect Michigan to be a little more creative, and I expect them to spread the field a little bit more both ways, side to side, and then north south. And I think it's going to be a good game. I think the spread is like 7.5. I think it's going to go down to the wire. I don't think it's going to be a blowout either way. But I think the best team that Michigan has faced so far is Ohio State, and I think that's going to continue to be the case this time.
Yeah, I'm a little bit surprised at that betting line. You mentioned it. It's been anywhere from 7.5. I just looked today, and it was 8.5. So I don't know if that probably means people are betting Georgia. But hey, you know what? 8.5 point underdog. I think that it's going to be closer than that, and I think they almost deserve to, especially if somebody that has followed Michigan there. It almost feels like you deserve to pick them here because the way they've played the last 2 weeks, or the last 2 games, I should say. So I think that could happen. And, the expectation of getting here, it's just amazing what a couple wins can do and how it could just flip everything, perceptions from the head coach, everything going on in the program. It's been, Eric, as you expect, and I know you know this, everybody's just reveling in the, and basking in the glow of, the last 2 games.
It's interesting you say 8.5. That's more like 10. Michigan always gets a point or point and a half just because so many people like to bet on Michigan. So their line is always skewed. I think that's why the Ohio State spread was actually narrower. I expected it to be 10. And I think that it was 7.5 just because so many people are betting Michigan nationwide and worldwide. And so 8.5, that's almost like a 10-point spread. If it wasn't Michigan, if it was the exact same players in different colors. So that's kind of, that's kind of disrespectful, I think, considering this is a team that only lost 1 game narrowly. The SEC always gets a little bit of an advantage in terms of the hype and in terms of the coverage. And we'll see. I think Georgia's very good. I think that they are going to bring a lot of players in there who are going to be NFL players. But you got to block Hutchinson, you got to block Ojabo, and so far no one's been able to do that, and we'll see if Georgia can.
Yeah, I really don't know when it comes down to that line. I think you're right. Michigan, usually it is inflated, but I think in the nature of these games that we've seen in these college football playoffs, these semifinals, they've had a way of getting away from one of the teams. And I do think, besides Ohio State, this is the first time. Remember, Michigan State was in there and it was 38-0, but there have been some blowouts in the semifinal, and I think SEC, Big Ten, I think that plays into it a little bit. I wanted to take you over to basketball. You heard Eric Spoelstra there, down from, I guess it would be your neck of the woods. You're living in Florida, and I wanted to thank the Michigan men's basketball Twitter for that audio of having the coach in there. Eric, this season, Michigan was picked as the favorites in the Big Ten. It doesn't look like they're the favorites anymore. They're not. If you took a poll again, but 7-4, they've got a lot of different pieces. I just noticed, they got the win on Saturday, and looking at the schedule, they've got a game against Purdue, Fort Wayne tomorrow, and then the day before, the eve of New Year's Eve, they're down in Central Florida, which really is your neck of the woods. And I wonder if you think that'll be a cakewalk, for the Wolverines against the Knights down there in Orlando.
No, that is my neck of the woods. That arena is a walking distance from where I teach. So I'm very familiar with that place and that arena, and that's going to be tough, Dennis. I think that even though school's out, a lot of students are looking forward to that game. It's a tough ticket to get. I think it's going to be loud. And I think that it's going to be a lot closer than I would have expected when I first saw the schedule. And it's funny, speaking of Orlando, I'm watching Michigan basketball just like you guys up there, and I'm like, well, what's missing there? They brought so many guys back. What's the deal there? Then I turned the channel to the Magic game, and Franz Wagner is like the best rookie in the NBA, minus maybe Mobley and Scotty Barnes. I'm like, well, that's part of the reason. Franz Wagner was playing the 1 the other night. And I realized everyone's got COVID, but their turnovers went way down with him at the 1. They might do that again. He is an incredible player and better than I expected. And so when you lose someone like him, and obviously Mike Smith was very good at handling the basketball and seeing the court, I think that there's, and even Shawnee Brown. I mean, Shawnee Brown is certainly not a point guard, but somebody who made really good decisions. And I think that it's very hard to replace the brain power that those guys had. And I think it's going to take a little bit of a while to do that. Now, there's going to be some games when Michigan gets it and they get the good point guard play. When they have that, when they have Hunter Dickinson and they have Diabate and some of the talented players that can do a lot of different things, then I think that they can be impactful and win several games. But the consistency, I think that's going to be missing for at least a few more weeks when they figure out the point guard position.
Yeah, all those names, I just remember Shawnee Brown coming in off the bench and being instant offense. It was a great 3-guard rotation that they have. And oh, yeah, Isaiah Livers, who could really shoot it from outside as well. And they had the big man, Austin Davis, who could come in and spell Hunter Dickinson and give you some post moves as well. So, yeah, it's going to be a little bit of an adjustment here for the team. 3-point shooting, they've got to do better from outside. I just think of Central Florida. I can remember, and when I think of Michigan basketball, when they had the transfer Dawkins, right? Aubrey Dawkins, and they had the big taco fall, right? That's when they came within a point in the NCAA tournament against Duke just a couple of years ago. That was an awesome game.
Yeah, no, that was very exciting around here. And really, I mean, UCF, I think when people say UCF, they think of the football team and they think of the national championship in quotes and Blake Bortles and guys like that. But UCF basketball is pretty good. And they have a player, I mean, if you're going to be watching the game next week, Isaiah Adams is somebody that almost left for the NBA. So that's a name you should know. He's going to be very good. He's going to be tough to defend. So, UCF, except for that one game against Duke, I think that people sort of consider that as maybe a fluke or just a team that got hot. But Donnie Dawkins is obviously a very good coach, and he's seen Michigan for many years, and he's going to have it ready. So I think that will be a very close, very good game. I could be wrong. I mean, it's an inconsistent team, Michigan. Sometimes sometimes they look like they did against Minnesota. Minnesota played great that game, but Michigan just didn't have any answers. And with the prior teams, they figured something out. And this year's team, there are games, there are opponents where they're just unable to figure something out in time. And I don't know if that's going to be this story this time, but I think it's going to be maybe February before say, okay, we're as resilient on the court as we are in our minds, and we have depth and we have talent and we have people getting used to roles. But it's not February yet, and I think it's still December, and I think that this one could go any which way.
Well, I can tell you that because of some of those games that you mentioned, Michigan really needs it when you start looking at how tough the Big Ten is. But you know what? The following day, if we're just talking about the matchups in Florida, in Orlando, Michigan, Central Florida on the 30th, but the 31st, down there at the Orange Bowl. Where are you going to be watching that game at?
I'll be there. I actually thought about watching the Michigan basketball game at UCF and then driving down. I actually know a friend of mine who's going to be doing that, and I admire that. But it's tough, Dennis, because that game's going to be over like 9-10 o'clock at night, and then you have to drive down to South Florida, and then that's a tough one. So I'm not going to be able to do the double, but I will be at the football game.
Well, keep taking pictures. So many times I look there, whether it's you're outside of your class or you're anywhere. You do a good job of documenting it all there via Twitter. So I like it. So continue doing that. You haven't lost anything as being a great guest either. Not if anybody ever suspected that, but it's always great talking with you, Eric, and we'll have to do it more often.
Yeah, thanks, Dennis, and your questions are always great.
Hey, well, thank you. Take care. It was great talking with you.
See ya.
Have fun down there in Miami for the college football playoff. There he is, Eric Adelson, joining us, a guy that I knew from back in the radio when I first started in Ann Arbor. He was working for ESPN, the magazine, and born and raised in Michigan, and likes talking about the Wolverines, and he's been a commentator on Michigan sports ever since. So there he is, Eric Adelson. All right, we've got a couple things to get to, a little bit more on Michigan basketball, the recruiting spotlight, memorabilia minute, and also something as we tick down the days and hours for the rest of this year, something, as we get ready for 2022 for you. But when it comes to the Michigan recruiting spotlight, I pulled some audio of one of the signees from Wednesday, and that is running back CJ Stokes, who we were able to talk with last week. And in Stokes out of South Carolina is pretty fired up to come in, just like everybody else. But asked him about his position coach, Mike Hart. Here's what CJ Stokes had to say.
Coach Hart was just the coach I was looking for. A nice, tough coach that's gonna make you work hard and hold you accountable. On top of what I already do for myself, as far as holding myself accountable, he'll keep me in check every day. One of the biggest things I was looking for was a coach that wasn't just gonna pat me on the back; he was gonna keep it real with me. And Coach Hart does that, and that's the reason I love him so much.
There you go, CJ Stokes. He likes Michigan Mike Hart. Not a big surprise, but also the job that Hart has done this year with the running back room. All three of the guys that have taken the majority of the snaps. You just think about the Orange Bowl and how Michigan is going to attack Georgia. And they'll have some different things, but, when you start talking about different things, how much are they going to throw to Donovan Edwards out of the backfield? How much are they going to throw to Blake Corum out of the backfield? How much are they going to say, hey, we're going to run right at Jordan Davis at, 6'6", 400 pounds. We're going to go right at him. That's a question that I'm sure they're going to test it. Like when I think that your Michigan and how the offensive lines played and how the backs have played, I think they get in there and say, you know what, we're not going into this saying we're not going to try. Like they did that against Wisconsin. They might not have as much success, but they're going to definitely try to get in there and see if they can move that bulldog front. See if this offensive line can crack what has been a great run defense this year, and overall a fantastic defense from sideline to sideline. So we'll see. From the Michigan recruiting spotlight, with the days ticking down until 2022, I wanted to look back at a couple of the games. We got 12 days until left of this year. And I'm here every day, weekdays. It'd be nice if I was here every day, I could just go one game at a time. But I wanted to look back at this Michigan football season and, looking at this year, starting with I'll look at the first two games. Michigan had Western Michigan, and they had Washington. And you know what? When you go back, and I was just looking at some of the numbers and thinking about that Western Michigan game, and it had been so long because of last year and everything else. We know pandemic-wise that, we were waiting for the Michigan football season. There was no spring game. So when Michigan finally did take the field against Western, and they got up 27-7, and it was exciting, but there was also a little bit of a concern. I was just looking back at my notes from that day that I took, and I said, Michigan fans should be a little excited, a little concerned. But the offensive line was pulling; they looked good. The tight ends were blocking here, and Haskins and Corum were really good against the Broncos. And then what U of M had, they had their running game, and they had a ton of big plays. And guess what? This was a foreshadowing for the rest of the season, because they, if they're not the best, statistically 50-yard plus, 70-yard plus, I think they are the best. And if you're looking for big time explosive plays, this Michigan team, in addition to running the ball, they made big plays. Look, Ronnie Bell had the 76-yard touchdown in that game. You had, the quarterback coming in and throwing J.J. McCarthy. You had him going to Baldwin for 69 yards, that one where he threw across the field and Baldwin went in. That was a huge play. A.J. Henning had a 74-yard reverse or just end around that ended up going in. Blake Corum had a big run on a kickoff, 79 yards. Not just like almost a touchdown. Those are a lot of big plays, and it showed up in that first game against Western. How about that? So you had some foreshadowing. And then you get to the Washington game, a night game. where U of M came out and ran the ball in the end 56 times for 343 yards, and both Haskins and Corum, it was ground and pound. But if you recall in that game, it was 10-0 at the half against the Huskies. And, I can remember, thinking about coming out in the second half saying, all right, you just run the ball. You got to be able to throw it as well. And then Michigan came out, and I think the whole crowd was poised, and everybody watching this was the same thing. It's like Michigan's got to do more than just ground and pound. They have got to throw the football. And they came out, and you know what? They handed the ball off, and they handed it off again. And before everybody was ready to jump on Twitter or, go down to the stadium or jump on the field and say, what are you guys doing? Well, they started having success. They went right down the field. They went right into the end zone, and they scored. And it was like, well, okay, you're having success doing that. The final numbers on Cade McNamara for the Washington game is pretty incredible. 7 for 15, 44 yards. And so you can recall how you were feeling, after that game against the Huskies. They had lost the game earlier to Montana. So in the end, when Michigan ran all over them, it was hard to say, oh, yeah, Michigan's back. And, this is going to be something that's sustainable. Michigan, they're going to be known for running the football. It was more like, that's good. But, man, they really have to be able to throw the ball. In this day and age, you can't just rely on ground and pound the rest of the way. But you know what? They did rely on the ground game and getting it done that way, with the passing game coming along and evolving with some big plays along the way. But there was reasons to be a little skeptical, excited and skeptical with those first two games. But you just look back at that Washington game and remember how it went and how people were feeling, at myself included, at the half, and thinking about, this is something different that they're going to have to definitely, air it out a little bit more. And they didn't. They stayed on the ground, and it was like, okay, that's nice, but what's Washington here? So, but that's a look back at those two games. Tomorrow we're looking at Northern Illinois and Rutgers. We'll take them 2 by 2. Both of those games with some things to point out and look at. I should also point out we do have some feedback coming in. And Antoine on the feedback. Let's look and see what Antoine is saying here. He's talking about that Georgia game, or as we call it, the OB, which is coming up quick here. A 4-2-5 defense that Georgia runs is susceptible to the outside run, and mobile quarterbacks, the defense is trained to react. So play action fake will be big in this game. You know what, Antoine, I think you're right. And I think trying to run between the tackles against Georgia, that doesn't seem like the way that I don't think Michigan's sitting around saying, yeah, we're just going to keep tenderizing. We're just going to keep going right. Yeah, especially what we've seen from Blake Corum. I know he had the drop against Michigan State. What was the other game that he also had the drop? The game he got hurt. Maybe it was Indiana in that one where he also, had one where you thought, okay, 2 drops, but you want to get him the ball on the outside, and obviously you want to get Donovan Edwards the ball any which way you can. And Edwards had the grab against OSU. So yeah, I think that, whether it's an outside run or throwing the ball to them on the outside, those linebackers are awesome from Georgia, but you know what? They can be had. And I do think that's going to be part of the Michigan game plan. Antoine with a little bit more here. Play action fake will be big in this game, and the reason they'll have to react because they play with undersized defensive backs to come up and help with the run. Yeah, I don't know. I'll have to look about the undersized backs and everything else, but I think part about getting it to the outside, and I think that they're going to definitely have that. I don't think the game is going to be like running between the tackles and just continuing to go that way. Well, one more from Antoine, who wanted to talk about Gaddis here. He has learned the art of play calling and setting up the other teams. He wants to train the defense to see a play and bite, and then run something totally different and catch them off guard. Well, I think that's a good point. The one thing about Gaddis here, and it all does play off of the run that Michigan has. So doing it and having a little bit of success is going to be some key. Like if they're not having any luck with the run, it's hard to then counter off of that. So, that's the biggest challenge of this game, having a little bit of success and then being able to, I think, throw the ball when they're not expecting it. So maybe they flip it. Like they're going to continue to do what they have done, but maybe Michigan flips their approach and has more of a pass to run than run to pass, how they've done in the past, or at least this season. I think I wouldn't be surprised to see that from Josh Gaddis. But the players on this offense, you know that the tight ends have been nice, and the wide receivers, they've got a slew of them on trying to target those guys down the field. And we know the throws between the hashes or on the hashes, those are the best ones when it comes down to watching Cade McNamara throw the ball. When JJ comes in, a little bit different here. So, yeah, all of that stuff. Good comments there by Antoine. All right, two more things here. One, Michigan basketball. The other, we got a 1 minute with some memorabilia. And with Michigan basketball, they did get the win against Southern Utah on Saturday. They were up 19. Was it 19? Like they're up 29 at the half and went on, to have the 37-point victory. So this one was over at the half. Hunter Dickinson was great. The Thunderbirds didn't have anybody could match up at all with Hunter Dickinson, but the most encouraging thing in this game right here that they played, Michigan, they had to have a win, was the play of Devontae Jones. Devontae Jones has been under the microscope here, and a lot of people, whether it's just saying, man, it's not a fit, or just you got to do better, and looking down, like Frankie Collins, maybe there's even some suggestions, maybe have him as the starter, but Jones here in a 2-game snapshot, his numbers look really good, and he played well. He played well right from the start against Southern Utah, and that's going to have to continue, because if you can get the good point guard play, and then I think Eli Brooks is going to be there, I think Hunter Dickinson is going to be there, then you can start saying, hey, can you get Caleb Houston making shots? Can Diabate continue to elevate his play? Then you're going to be on to something, and then you can be a factor in the Big Ten, and certainly you can think about making the NCAA tournament, which is still the goal here, I think, for this team. Now, you want to talk about winning the Big Ten. I have pulled back on that, not saying that they can't, but I'm just looking at the number of L's that they've had here and looking at, hey, get to the NCAA tournament. That's what I'm talking about for the Michigan basketball team. All right, one piece of memorabilia, and this is the first time I've done something non-Michigan, and I just have this this helmet over here. And if you look there, that is, could you even tell if I gave you 10 guesses on who that could be? Reggie Bush. Reggie Bush. One time for the memorabilia minute. All right, that's going to do it. Thanks for watching. We will be here tomorrow. Bill Bender from the Sporting News expected to join us. We'll talk more Michigan and Georgia. So until then, thanks for watching. Goodbye.